All right, so we're beginning a new series of messages today that are going to take us through the first week of June. We get a couple extra weeks in here where we're going to throw a couple extra messages at you. But we're going to start by talking today about this transition series by talking about change. All right? Now, change is a word that I know most of us don't like, but I want you to do some interaction here with me this morning. What are some changes that you're experiencing in life right now? What are some changes you're experiencing in life? And they can be little things, they could be monumental things. What are some changes you're experiencing in life? Huh? Job, okay. Job changes. What else? School, did you say school? Okay, yeah, all right. Aging. Oh, okay, yes. I feel every one of those rolls of the paint roller that I did. Yeah, yeah. All right. What else? What other changes? Health, okay. Kids graduating, yeah. Oh my. What else? Anything else? Retirement, yeah. When you retire, you don't have to answer the bell anymore. You don't have to get up and go to work and all those wonderful things. You have to find a whole new life, right? All right. Well, change is hard. No matter whether we're young or old, we all go through change in life, and when we go through change, it's hard. I remember as a kid having all this pain in my legs, and the doctor said, "Oh, it's just growing pains." Well, I don't like growing. If I have to go through pain, I don't like to grow. But that's the reality of life, isn't it? If we're going to grow, we have to go through change. But what if I told you this morning that the problem isn't the change? The problem is that you and I don't like endings. You and I don't like endings. I mean, I'm really sad that Ted Lasso is going to end in a few weeks. It's so sad. No Ted Lasso fans out here? Okay, there's a few of you. I'm sad that it's going to end. I mean, story could go on and on and on, But we all face endings, right? We all face endings of some sort. I mean, the school year is going to come to an end, and all the teachers are going to be so sad, right? No. All the kids are going to be happy, right? Problem is we don't like endings. And the reason we don't like endings is because endings force us to learn new ways of doing things. Sometimes the endings are of our own control. Sometimes they're a result of something that's beyond our control. And while we say we don't like change, yet we experience it constantly, our real issue is with the ending. So as we get started in this new series of messages, I want you to get acquainted with a chart that comes from a man named William Bridges, who authored a book called Managing Transitions, Making the Most of Change. And throughout this series, we're going to talk about change. We're going to talk about change, and this applies to everybody, okay? We all go through change every day. But listen, change and the word that I'm going to use now, transitions, those are two different things. Change is something that is situational. Change is like when you up and move to a new house. Change is when you get a new boss. Change is when you have to adapt to a new technology at work. But transition is what happens up here and in here. Transition's what happens up here and in here. It's having to deal with the psychological part of internalizing and coming to terms with a whole new situation that's brought about by change. Now, if you look at this image, you're going to see that there are it's a three-phase process of transitions. Now, I'll just be honest and upfront with you. This comes out of a business book, but this is Life 101, okay? Because we all experience these transitions, okay? It begins in this blue part, which is called ending, losing, and letting go. I've got a clue in that sentence that you will want to pay attention to at the end of the service, okay? Letting go. Anyway, when we talk about ending and losing and letting go, it's really the process of ending. It's the process of letting go of the old ways, and it's coming face to face with loss. Okay, big news in the room is that I'm leaving, right? I'm not going to be the pastor here as of the end of June. So when that time comes, we are all, me, you, everybody, we are all going through that process. And part of that process means that we have to let go of the old things. And that's me. Okay? We have to let go of the old things. It's not easy. It's not easy. I mean, we've been in the process of going through all of our stuff, to make our move. And it's like, you have to look at something and say, do I want this or not? And more times than not, well, I want to keep it. Rita wants to get rid of it. But you have to decide, what am I going to let go? What am I going to get rid of? Then we transit into this second phase, which is called the neutral zone. Any Star Trek fans out there? Just a couple? Okay. See, the last service, everybody remembered Star Trek, But anyway, so we're going to transit the neutral zone. We're actually going to talk about that next week, and anybody who's a Trekkie can come dressed in their favorite Trekkie outfit. But anyway, it's a scary time in that in-between zone, okay? Between the Romulans and the Federation, Okay, between what's old and what's a new beginning. And that's the last phase, the new beginning. And in the new beginning, that's where we identify, or we get new identities, and we experience a new sense of energy, because when new things happen, there is a new sense of energy, and there's also a new sense of purpose. Now, one thing I want you to notice on this chart is that this is not linear. This is not linear. Okay, transitions happen in ebbs and flows, and the new beginning may start immediately. I mean, think about it this way. When your kids move out of the house, it's sort of sad. As somebody said before, they all move back, but, hopefully when they move out, one of the things that you have to do, the moving out is one thing, that's the change. But then there's that time. There's that time that you deal with your emotions as a parent. And then there comes that point where you go, okay, it's time to make their room an office. That's when you get to the new beginning part, okay? When you go from letting them go to rearranging the furniture so that you can start something new. One final part about this chart, okay? Everyone goes through this process of transition on their own timing, okay? Nobody goes through change and transition the same as the next person. Think about it like death, okay? Because in a sense it is. But think about this. When people process the death of a loved one, some people move through it quickly. Other people take a long time to deal with it. Nobody goes through the same emotions. Okay? When I walk out the door and Pastor Rachel walks in, you're going to go through all sorts of emotions. That's natural. Some people will make that transition much sooner. Some people will have a hard time. It's okay. It's okay. Don't ever look at somebody and say, hey, you got to move on. Just give them time. Everybody processes transitions in their own way. Now, all of this leads me to some scripture that I want to share with you this morning. And we're going back to the Old Testament to the story of the nation of Israel moving from slavery in Egypt and journeying to the Promised Land. Now, if you know the story, which I'm going to assume that a lot of us do because the Ten Commandments have been on TV since I was this big, and probably longer than that. And so at some point in time, you've heard of the story of the Israelites going through the desert, through the Red Sea, making their way to the Promised Land. And so I want to read to you how this all begins in Exodus chapter 3, verses 7 and 8. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of the land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey. Now, let me put this into perspective. Change for the Israelites is when they start their journey out of Egypt. That's where change happens. Transition is from the moment they stepped out of Egypt until they got to the Promised Land. By the way, anybody know how long that transition lasted? Yeah, 40 years, okay? Transition shouldn't last 40 years, but what did God have to do? God had to get the old way out of them before they could begin something new. And there's a lesson there for us. Change was the event of Pharaoh letting the people go, but transition was the 40 years that the people spent wandering through the desert. Now, we're going to fast forward into the story. Moses sends 12 spies into the Promised Land because these people are ready to get from Egypt to the Promised Land. But when they get back from spying out the land, we get this report in Numbers chapter 13, verses 27 and 28. And I want you to hear what these 12 spies said. They gave Moses this account. We went into the land to which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here is its fruit. But the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. We even saw the descendants of Anak there. Now, if you want to know what they're talking about there, they're talking about giants. They're talking about big people, okay? And so the people are afraid. The people are afraid because they thought they were just going to waltz into the Promised Land, but now it appears as though they are going to have to go and fight the giants. Okay? And so this is what happens in Numbers 14, verses 1 and 2. That night, all the members of the community raised their voices and wept aloud. All the Israelites grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole assembly said to them, "If only we had died in Egypt." See, these people wanted to go back. They didn't want to have to fight for what they were going to experience. They wanted to go back to Egypt. They wanted to go back into slavery. And sometimes that's the problem with us, is that we prefer the captivity of what was rather than the freedom of what will be. See, the Israelites, they were happy when they got to walk out of Egypt, out of their slavery. They were able to let go of that suffering. But the desert presented challenge after challenge after challenge, and now they're up against these giants. And you think about your own life. You've had to face giants. You've had to face your own giants. And I'll tell you what, when you find yourself in that neutral zone, it's a place full of chaos. And I don't know about you, but I'm in chaos right now. In more ways than one. I'd tell you to walk to my office and look, and you could see what chaos looks like, but please don't, okay? Over the next few weeks, we're going to unpack that whole chart. We're going to talk about all the stages, but we're going to start today by talking about ending and losing and letting go. And when I say that, don't worry, this is like almost over, so don't think I'm taking a whole lot of time. But, we don't like endings. We don't like endings. So I want you to remember this. Before you can begin something new, you have to end what used to be. And before you can learn a new way of doing things, you have to unlearn the old ways. And before you can become a different kind of person, you have to let go of your old identity. Beginnings depend on endings. But we don't like endings. So what do we have to do? What do we have to do? We have to do three things. We have to, first of all, name our fears. Second of all, we have to proclaim who our God is. And third, we have to claim our future. Now, what is it that makes you fearful of change? What is it that makes you fearful of change? It's the unknown, right? I mean, on July 2nd, there's going to be a different face up here, okay? And right now, some of you are thinking to yourself, I don't think Pastor Rachel will be able to preach like Pastor George. I hope not. Because you know what? Pastor Rachel isn't Pastor George. Okay? We have to let go. And it's okay to do that. It's okay. Or we're going to feel lots of control. Things are going to be different now. I just know things are going to be way different. Well, you know what? In talking to Pastor Rachel, one of the things she said was, I don't want to change anything. I told her, I said, Rachel, you get in there and you change everything. But no. Listen, if Pastor Rachel comes in and changes something, that's okay. That's okay. Because we need change. We need change. When you change things up, you grow. And if there's anything I can tell you that I want for all of you, it's for you to grow. So the first thing we have to do is we have to name our fear. I mean, for the Israelites going to the Promised Land, their fear were the giants. Their fear were the giants. Now, what's really fascinating is that the people never saw any giants, but they were afraid of the giants. It's sort of like when you're a little kid and you're afraid of the monster in the closet or the thing under the bed. Have you ever seen that thing in the closet or the thing under your bed? No. But are you afraid of it? Yeah, you are. But you've never seen it because it's not there. It's not there. And you see, folks, I think this is what we do because we don't see necessarily where we're going and what's next. We just sort of live in our fears. What I'd really like you to do is just take a moment this morning and think about some of those fears. Just name them. I mean, write them down on your sermon outline or something, but name your fears. Maybe it's about something that you're going through in life right now. Name it. It's okay. Because naming it helps you to move through this process. The second thing that we learned from the Israelites' wilderness journey is that they allowed their fears to cloud their understanding of who God is. Just think for a moment about what the Israelites who left Egypt had experienced. They had seen all of these plagues. They literally walked through a sea that was parted. They got out in the desert, and every morning there was manna on the ground, and there was quail that came so that they had food to eat. They saw Moses speak to a rock and hit a rock, and water came out. And there was this fire, this pillar of fire, and this cloud that they followed day in and day out. Now, I don't know about you, but if I would have seen God do all those things, I would have a whole lot of trust and confidence that no matter what lie ahead, God is going to take care of it. But when these 12 spies came back and 10 of them told them about all the giants in the land, people forgot about who God was and they got focused on the giants. And so those folks never made it to the promised land. Why do we think that the God who has been with us isn't going to be with us in the future? Why do we think that the God who was with us in the past isn't going to be with us in the future? I think in some ways, very dangerous thing to say here. I think in some ways, a lot of people put a face on God by putting the face of whoever's standing up here on God. And let me tell you, folks, I'm not God. And Pastor Rachel isn't either. But you know what? Don't be afraid when somebody else stands up here. Because, as I said earlier today, any of you could actually stand up here and do what I do. And I'm serious about that. Any of you could stand up here and do what I do. There's nothing special about me. Okay? Because you see, it's what God is doing. It's not what I do. It's not what Pastor Rachel's going to do. It's what God does. And listen, 17 years ago when I walked in, well, not this building, because this was the parking lot 17 years ago. When I walked in that sanctuary over there, you had no clue who I was. You had no clue what the future was looking like when I walked through the door. But you know what? You still believed in the same God. And you still had the same confidence in the God who had been with you in the past. Hey, if nothing else, when you walk in here, maybe this place will remind you that God is always faithful. Which leads me to something that I think is important for us to learn from the Israelites as they journeyed from place to place in the wilderness. They set up these memorials. They would take some stones and they would build a memorial. And the memorial was a way to say, God did something here. At this particular point and at this particular time, God did something here. But I want you to notice something about these memorials that they made in the desert. When they made the memorial, they made it and then they moved on. They made a memorial. They said, God acted here, and then they moved on. They didn't camp there. They camped over here, because this is the way they were headed. But what they said when they built the altar, when they built that memorial, they said, hey, if we ever come back this way again, that'll be a reminder that the God who acted back then can act today. Folks, if you remember nothing else from today, I hope you remember that. That the same God who was over here is going to be over here. And that means that we have to do the third thing, which is to claim our future. I don't know if you realize this or not, but Joshua and Caleb, two of the spies, the two who came back and said, hey, God can do this. They were the only two that ever made it into the promised land because they didn't let their fears consume them. They knew who God was and who God would be, and they had seen the future. You know, the neutral zone, we're going to talk about the neutral zone next week. It's a crazy place. The neutral zone is sort of where we're at right now. It's that not yet kind of place where we're still a little uncertain. But let me tell you, the neutral zone is also a great place of creativity. And one of the things I know about Linglestown life and about the God that we serve is that this next season is going to be a time of great creativity. And one way for you to claim the future is to see your role in making it happen. You see, it doesn't matter who stands up here. Linglestown life is about the people out there. You and you and you, finding your opportunity to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, and to boldly go where no man or woman has gone before. Only those of you who ever watched Star Trek know what I just said. The rest of you will have to watch the opening credits of Star Trek to find out what I just said. Yeah, live long and prosper. I can do it with both hands. I was a Trekkie when I was a kid. And see, when Captain Kirk took the Starship Enterprise to explore those strange new worlds, to seek out new life, new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has gone before, that's where you are right now. Now, I hate to mix metaphors, but I got to end today. I could go on for a long time, but I got to end by talking about, this phase that we're in right now, that first phase. It's called what? Ending. And what else? Oh, letting go. Does that sound like a song? Should maybe I sing that song? No. Don't worry, I won't sing it. But I bet I could find a little girl down there who could sing it for us. Listen, if you haven't listened to Elsa sing Let It Go for a while, maybe today you wanna hit replay either on the DVD or on your music service, whatever. But when Elsa starts singing this song, Let It Go, she is expressing all sorts of pent-up emotions. I mean, you go back and listen to it. It is a song filled with all sorts of emotions because her life is changing. And she makes this statement in the song. She says, it's funny how some distance makes everything seem small. And the fears that once controlled me can't get to me at all. It's time to see what I can do, to test the limits and break through. As I read through the lyrics again this week, what Elsa is doing in her song is she's claiming the future, right? And there's that line where she sings about the frozen fractals, and you see fractals all over the screen. That's just a little representation of them up there, but fractals are beautiful. Fractals are all over the place, and they're just such a beautiful thing. And that's what I want you to remember today about the song, is that when she talks about those frozen fractals all around, she's talking about this creativity that comes out of all of the emotions. And so she says this, my power flurries through the air into the ground. My soul is spiraling in frozen fractals all around. And one thought crystallizes like an icy blast. Anybody know the next line? I'm never going back. The past is in the past. Told you there's a whole crew over here that'll sing it for you. Folks, let it go. Let it go. The past is in the past. Name your fears, proclaim the power of God, and claim the future. Join me in a word of prayer.